Welcome to the Surge Podcast. My name is John DelHousaye, and I'm the director of Surge School. And we are introducing a new curriculum called ARDR. It's an acronym that stands for Awareness, Response, Distraction, and Resistance. And that means awareness of God's presence. One of the things about the Bible is the God that it represents. It's not so much conceptual. The invitations are not so much about knowledge about God, but rather the true joy of psalmists like David in Psalm 23 is the awareness that God is with us. And Jesus is called Emmanuel, which means God with us. And so the curriculum celebrates how we can know God through encounter. We can live in the awareness of his presence, and then our lives become a constant response to that reality. And the underlying challenges to that are the many distractions around us. But then there's also the issue of our own wounds, our own history, our traumas. And so there's also the issue of resistance. But in that curriculum, we're reflecting on the three transcendentals, truth, goodness, and beauty, and how they have these conducive properties that point us to God, who is one yet distinct in person, and that you can't separate truth from goodness or beauty from truth and so on. And I'm real excited to, my guest today, his name is Dave Beldman. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Dave is uniquely situated to talk about truth and its relationship to art. We've been working together for a few years now. And it's kind of fun because my sense is that you and I both started to kind of flirt with art. Mm-hmm. You and I were both trained theologians in the academic world, and then we started posting art on Instagram and encouraging one another, and what I've noticed is just over even just this last year is just even a deepening of your work and a broad array of genre and experimentation, and so it seems like that seed planted a while ago is starting to really grow in some exciting ways. But thanks for being willing to talk with us a little bit.
Yeah, I'm happy to, and always good to talk with you, John.
Yeah. Well, I want to just open up with this with a question. What kind of truth can only be shown and not spoken? I think what I'm asking is, you've written books, and you and I, we both love words. We kind of came from this logocentric place, but now we're drawn to the arts, and I wonder, how would you approach that question? Mm-hmm. What is it about truth? What kind of truth, in your opinion, can only be shown and not spoken of?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So I guess I would start with the fact that, like other forms of art, it has to be engaged with. And yet I think there's something about visual art that requires engagement. It's mm-hmm. more elusive maybe than art that uses words, poetry or music. And so, yeah, it invites more engagement. What kind of truth? Yeah.
And when you say elusive, is mm-hmm. it E-L or A-L-L?
That's a good question.
Is it alluding or alluding to?
It's elusive, so it's kind of hard to grasp.
The E-L.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it does. So is it revealing a truth? I think it's requiring us to engage with the truth that is maybe latent or
maybe
hidden. Yeah.
Yeah.
In some of the work that you sent us in preparation, you talked about, I've got it here, some of the most important things in life are invisible and yet real and can be known by their effects. but sometimes we must find them. And I think the artists and art reveal these hidden things, but in a mysterious way.
Mm-hmm. And maybe in a non-dogmatic way.
Yes.
As well. Like they're not telling you how to interpret or to see, but they're sort of pointing.
Yeah, inviting.
Yeah. Yeah, which sounds a lot like Jesus's ministry. Yeah.
I'm thinking about the parables, actually. I mean,
Right,
now
right,
they're that's spoken, those are words, and yet they're hard.
Yeah.
They're not like they're intended to come alongside a truth, and yet there is a mystery to them that requires like an engagement. Yeah.
When you're creating, what usually comes first for you? An idea, feeling, or a problem that you're wrestling with?
Idea, feeling, or a problem. I think what you have to realize about me, a little bit about my background. I started my career as a tradesman, an electrician. And from there, I became an academic. I became a student for many years, actually, first, and then a teacher and a professor. And I think especially since COVID, I've always been interested in art and creativity and always been fascinated by artists and people who are creative, partly because I didn't feel I was very creative. And so there was a mystery to artists who could, draw something or what have you, even music. And I know people don't like it when I say this. I don't feel myself as an art. I don't see myself as an artist, a creative type. Yes. I'm sort of taking on the mantle, I suppose, of being an artist. But even your questions, as I've been thinking about them for this last week or so, made me realize I'm much more doing art than I'm thinking about the art that I'm doing.
Sure.
And
which
kind
might be the antidote to our background, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, it was during COVID where I think I started taking bigger steps in my, creative journey. And that was a kind of therapeutic thing, a way to get out of my head, get out of, all the stuff that's going on and focus. So your question again was, does it start with the feeling, an idea, or
a problem?
A problem. Yeah. So I think it usually starts with an idea. And I'm also at that stage where I feel like I'm seeing a lot of different art forms through social media or whatever, and it's sparking ideas, creative ideas in me. So I feel a lot of mimicking of other artists or
mimetic.
Yes, taking an idea and making it like putting a twist on it. So I think it usually comes from an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in you too. There's a real, it's beautiful actually how you're always celebrating local artists and you're always looking for collaboration and very, very important. Well, talking about truth, the Greek word is aletheia, which also means reality. And so there's sort of a correspondence view of truth there. Yeah. Truth is real. There's a substance to it. Even though it may not be on the surface, take love, for example. It may be one of the most real things in the universe, guides so much of our behavior, that and hatred. But the curriculum, we talk about truth as reality, being or the way things are and behave. How does your art process from initial idea, concept, to final execution reflect an effort to align your work with this deeper sense of reality? There's one Old Testament scholar that talked about the grain of the universe, right? Rather than like mere surface appearance.
Yeah. So it kind of depends on what I'm working on. Sometimes I like to try a lot of different things. You kind of alluded to that. I think this comes partly from being a tradesman that has to like troubleshoot things. So I like the technical aspect of different media. So I've done a lot of like broken tile mosaics. So I pressed into that for a bit. I did some like kind of carving, block printing, relief carving. Painting is interesting to me. Like lino cut, block printing. So it depends. Sometimes I'm just like trying something out, and there's not a lot of thought to like, how is this like reflecting reality, or tapping into or giving a new perspective. I would say I did a series of wood block prints, which there were 4. I called it Ordinary Saints, and they were images of my kids, and and each of my kids kind of being depicted doing something deep within what they've been called to do. So my youngest daughter is a visual artist, and so she's doing a painting, and my son likes to build things in construction, so he's depicted like that. But they all have the halos, and so what I was trying to do there for other people and reflect a deep-seated truth that I believe about the universe is that, particularly as Christians, we are all in holy orders, and that our occupations are the things that God has called us to, and through our work, we are called to glorify Him and love and serve our neighbor. And so that series was meant to kind of wake people up a little bit. I feel like in my undergrad teaching, I taught this a lot, vocation, and how is the biblical story inviting us to be participants in God's mission in the world to restore things. And so this was my way of visually depicting that and inviting people to see that perspective, or at least wonder about it and be curious about it.
I love that you used the word order, because that came up in another episode where we were talking about monastic order, and Jill, an artist, was talking about her practice of art. And here, we're recording this in the monastery, right? A gathering, of local artists. And I know that you've done work here as well. As you were sharing, I was reminded of your most recent stuff that you've been posting, which you're taking pages from famous authors and you're blocking out things and circling words. Can you talk a little bit about that, particularly in the context of meaning, right? Because it seems like I don't know, is it superimposing meaning, or are you drawing something out, that would not be on the surface, or is it mirror? What's going on with that?
Great question. So this is something I discovered. I think I've maybe known about it for a while, but just more recently bumped into, and I'm like, oh, well, that sounds cool. So it's called blackout poetry. Yeah. So and I've never composed poetry. I need to qualify that, because at Christmas time, as a family, one of our practices is to write a poem with the gift we're giving to a family member. So it's not real poetry, but, so I've never really composed poetry, and poetry has been, is an art form that I don't resonate as much with, even though I would love to, because I love poetry and I think it really matters. And so I bumped into this just recently, and I'm like, I want to give that a try. And so basically, you take a book and you look at a page, and it requires some concentration. My daughter was trying it. My wife's away right now, and so we're spending a lot of time together. So she's trying. She's like, Dad, this is really hard. So you got to spend time with it. It requires like slowing down, being attentive to words, identifying words on the page that you think could fit. But one of the ones I did really focused on love. Like, they're very short. The most recent one was a little darker. It's called Alone, and I'm just like, I wonder, could a very different poem come from the same page?
Right.
So you're limited by the words that are on the page, by the author who composed these. I did have a little bit of feeling of guilt, because somebody put a lot of work into composing this, and now I'm taking it and sort of repurposing it. So,
although you could make the case that their own work was a spolia of materials and things, so it was like their response to something, and now you're responding to their response.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Something new. And this came up in another podcast episode of just how like our experience of art fundamentally shifts with our life, right? You know, one artist was talking about creating something, coming back a few years later, where when she first created it, it was finished, but then it had a sense of being unfinished, you know, and all of that.
Yeah, yeah. So I've really enjoyed that. It does remind me a little bit of, one of the first mosaics I've done in the last few years, anyways, was of an image that you had painted.
It's in my office.
Yeah,
yeah.
And so
I love it.
That was again another one where I didn't do the design work per se. You designed the painting. But there was a sense in which, I took that and made it my own different media. So yeah, the blackout poetry is interesting. It doesn't take a lot of time. It is again good for me in this season just to slow down, concentrate. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that because the iconography of Jesus's face was patterned after a famous artist in France named Georges Rouault, who I just loved. I really connected with his images of Christ. He also would paint prostitutes, which was very uncommon. This was in the late, I think, 1800s or early 1900s, but he would paint people that were kind of thrown away by Parisian society and kind of putting them right up with Jesus juxtaposed. And the compassion that came through Jesus's eyes was something I didn't see in earlier iconography. So I ripped them off. And every now and then people will like send me pictures. Hey, have you ever heard of this guy, Georges Rouault? He's like copying you. I'm like, nope. The other way around. But it was cool to have, then you get, you connect with those eyes and then create your own mosaic.
Yeah.
Literally of these broken pieces.
Yes.
Being brought together. Yeah.
I went on to do 2 more of those, and one of them's hanging in my living room.
Yeah.
So.
I knew you wouldn't be content. Another concept that is in the class is actually Confucian. Confucius talked about the rectification of names, and he was trying to figure out why Chinese society was not doing well in his day. And he blamed leadership to a certain degree, even though he never was given authority himself. But he kind of analyzed it as an academic. But his diagnosis was that when words or signifiers used in popular discourse no longer connects to the signifieds, meaning the map becomes distorted from the terrain, so to speak, that's when society falls apart. And so the rectification of names is making sure that our words match reality. If that's the intent, right? If we're claiming that this is like in the indicative mood, making sure that it's in fact real. And so that kind of leads me to this question, because again, we're not in this logocentric space, we're in this artist space. But what makes an artwork truthful in its representation, right? And it's not necessarily a literal, mirrored, mimetic thing. That's what Aristotle wanted, or Plato, I think, but not always the case. What have you learned about that? What makes it truthful?
Yeah. And I wrestle with them. This is a tough question. So all you artists out there,
the theologian in residence,
think about this question: what makes an art piece real? And I think I don't think there's one answer to it. And part of it is like, art. I want to be careful because art often does more than what it's intended to do, but what it's like creator intended it to do. But some art is just playful. Yeah. Right. And it's truthful if it invites people to have joy or to laugh or to
Play
feel lighter.
Is a beautiful reality that we just described to children, right?
So And I think probably some of my art would fall into that. This is just, it's fun for me to make.
Yeah.
It's fun for me to share.
Yeah.
So in that way, it's tapping into the truth in which it was tended. And, I think like at its deepest, maybe I would want to say that, art is true when it reveals to us reality.
Right. Yeah.
So like my Ordinary Saints series is intended to reveal something that may not be totally obvious to a lot of
And
Christians.
yet is the essence of your children as you see them as their father.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think good, meaningful art taps into some truth of reality. And sometimes that's just like naming or signifying brokenness.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love street art, graffiti, Banksy. I used to live in Bristol, England, where I did my PhD, and Banksy is from Bristol, and he did there was an exhibit at the Bristol Art Museum of his stuff.
Yeah.
And going through that exhibit, it felt heavy because what he is doing a lot of the time is kind of mocking culture. And so there was a lot of stuff that was kind of naming like the brokenness in our culture. And I think people think it's funny, and it's like it is kind of funny, but experiencing it all there was kind of like a heaviness to it. But I think he's really good at really kind of showing the irony of our culture, and the things, exposing things that we do as strange,
Right.
as disconnected to what we think about reality.
Right.
So he's good at that.
You use the word exposing, which is interesting because what is so often the case with Banksy's art, they paint over it, cover it up, tear it down as quickly as they can,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember when I told you I was Banksy?
I don't, but
For listeners, Banksy is like technically anonymous, right?
yes.
He hasn't come out yet.
Yeah.
Said, "Here
That's
I
right.
am." Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there's that kind of truth. I think it's true when the artist is true to themselves. Now, this gets tricky. I'm not a professional artist, so I don't have to make my living off art.
Yeah.
I think I feel for my artist friends who have to do that and even, I have these discussions. One of my daughters is a musician, and the other does visual art. And, in order to make money, so we have these discussions about like the truth that they feel they need to convey, but then it's not always what people want to buy.
Right.
Right. Or my musician daughter, she wrote a song long ago, and it's kind of become a favorite to people who know her music. Yeah. And she's kind of like, she's moved on from it.
Right.
And yet her audience expects to hear that song. And so she's like, how do I be true to my voice and to where my art is taking me, and yet also like please the audience? Or yeah, so that's a tough one. How does an artist be true to him or herself,
right,
in the art they create?
And truth in terms of consumption is like vegetables, The audience generally, that's not what they're looking for.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Well, this kind of leads to a question, and I always love talking with you because you're Canadian. You're close, but you also have that sort of distance, cultural eye on things. And one of the things I always wrestled with, I grew up evangelical, and it was the typical thing, this was the music I was allowed to listen to, and not real rock bands, like Ozzy Osbourne or whatever, but like Petra,
Yes,
and then like the artwork that would be in our house, one artist, and I don't want to be mean about it, but there was this famous artist when I was growing up called, named Thomas Kincaid. And he had all these galleries all over the place. And you could buy not an original artwork, it was a print, but then he had like people put teeny little brush strokes of paint, just a little bit here and there. And then he could sell it for hundreds of dollars. And so, I had those in my living room growing up, and they were always these like quaint cottage scenes with a lamp. And then lastly, like, Christian movies, I just wasn't allowed to go to our movies, but, these Christian movies. And the thing about these Christian movies is there was no real complexity. There always was this happy ending. And I guess I would say there's just sort of a sugary artificiality to it. And I never understood that, because evangelicals are so committed to truth. We're the ones that argue for the historical reality of the resurrection and Jesus, the historical Jesus, and the Bible is inerrant. And so we're very truth-seeking people. Why is our art so artificial, Dave?
I think a truncated view of the gospel, and a truncated view of mission. So if the gospel is about, saving damned souls to, some otherworldly, disembodied existence, then why do good art? Just do movies that present the gospel to people.
Get the message out.
And I think that, and there is something admirable about that. I think we should care about lost souls, and we should care about preaching the gospel. And yet, so if the gospel is that God is redeeming all things, that our bodies are going to be restored, that this world, all the impurities are going to be, purified, and we're going to be left with the perfect creation that we are going to be creating in, then art really does matter. I think it's a matter of our witness as well. But I'm with you. I grew up feeling guilty about listening to the top 40 pop songs or whatever, and once I got a bigger view of the gospel, what that did, it did two things. It made me realize that it's okay to listen to so-called secular music, but also not all secular music is good to listen to.
You're right.
Yeah. And so I had the guilty pleasure of, listening to it, but I wasn't given the tools of discernment to say why this song is good and why, this song is bad, and not necessarily just only reduced to lyrics, but just musically.
Right.
So
you use the word discernment, and I think that's a really important word. Jesus talks about us being innocent like doves, but shrewd as serpents. There's a certain confrontation with reality, real reality, right? With all of it, the darkness as well, but then also being able to still be childlike and innocent. Right?
And so I think what, on the best reading, what, the Christian music, the Christian art and creativity that we were talking about, we grew up with, I think the best interpretation of that is there's a desire to be prophetic in preaching the gospel, right? And yet I think what we miss is that the best art, the best music can be prophetic in a bigger sense, and help us, and prophetic in the sense of like giving us the lens to see reality, like that previous question we had. So seeing the brokenness and be able to lament over it, or seeing beauty and goodness and truth and being able to celebrate that or press into it when we're not feeling it or what have you.
I appreciate that. It reminds me of Paul quoting pagan writers and calling them prophets. Because what they saw was true.
And he was presenting the gospel. And really didn't mention Jesus. And used their poets.
Absolutely.
And their art. Yeah.
Well, I have one more question for you. The class suggests that we experience truth in the essence of God's creation. We used the term essence before in relation to what you were wanting to show forth in your children in those cuts. As it confronts our senses and thoughts, in what specific ways do you seek to create art that acts as a confrontation, allowing the audience's senses and thoughts to engage with the essential nature of reality or creation? When I use that word confrontation, it's interesting. We've already talked about Banksy a little bit. Very much a confrontational artist, but how would you respond to that?
Man, another deep question there, John.
Well, I saved him for you.
Yeah.
The theologian in residence.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, it depends on what I'm working with, but just to take the example of the poetry. So just yesterday, I did this one called Alone, the blackout poetry, and there's heaviness to it, and I think in we're getting better at this, but in the church, in the kind of church circles I move in or have moved in recently, we're not good at naming the darkness or looking the darkness in the face, or really just helping bearing the burdens of people who are hurting. Again, I think we're getting better at it. But I do think that's when I think of music or movies, I like the movies that are that deal with heavier things. And so I wouldn't say a lot of my art does that or has done that. I have to think about that a little bit. But I think that's important to confront that reality, that this is a reality. And how are we going to talk about it? So could this art piece open up that conversation?
Maybe you're sensing an invitation even now. In this moment.
But let me put it back to you.
Yeah.
Your question back to you.
Oh, you can't. You can't do that.
How do you think
Dave.
the best art confronts?
Well,
in that way?
I think, I mean, in my opinion, and I'll do the same. I'm not a professional artist either, but there's something so disarming about art, and I think that's a common. I mean, I'm not sharing something profound, but I think that's why so many people, love movies and they love music and and even the lyrical content of music and the messaging, because when art is done right, it just cuts through. It just cuts through because it's a less varnished reality, or you could say it's the whole thing. It's the whole thing. And what do you say? What do you say to that? And I think of like Suetonius. I've been rereading his lives of, the bad emperors, basically how not to lead, and I'm like, what is this? Suetonius is an ancient Roman historian, actually talks about Christianity a little bit, an important figure, but, like all he had to do was just narrate what Nero did, you know what I mean? Like there's no, and not to make a political connection to today, but I think things are going to be exposed and they already are being exposed by artists that will help our culture get reconnected to reality again. And I do sense that our culture is struggling with the rectification of names. I mean, you use the term like naming the darkness. Right. And so maybe, in the West, we're due for something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's been interesting. Kit Danley is somebody here in the Valley who has just committed her life and career and ministry to serving the people on the margins. And I've been in a study group with her where she looks through these mystic activists, and what's interesting, she names them mystic activists, people who are somehow connected into this contemplative way of life, and yet caring about justice and caring about the gospel and society, and it's just been so interesting to walk alongside and hear about these different figures in history, and where art, and creativity at different times comes up in places where resistance is needed, or there's massive injustice. I grew up, my parents, their formative years were the tumultuous years of the 60s, and they loved folk music. They weren't hippies, but they loved folk music, and that so I grew up hearing the folk music of the 60s. And this was a time when, you got the doo-wop songs that were pretty fluffy. And that was kind of like the potato chips diet. But the protest songs, the folk songs were these protest songs that were deeply, deeply tapping into the things that were going badly wrong in society. And I think was part of, affecting change.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember it was probably 25 years ago, reaching out to Kit Danley, and just saying, I think I was asking, I wanted to learn more about her ministry, and her response was, come and see.
Yeah.
And so I spent a day with her, and she walked me around and showed me things. But that's kind of going back to where we started, what aspect of truth has to be shown, not spoken of.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that, Neighborhood Ministries, where that she founded and runs, is full of art as well. Yeah, and beauty.
Well, Dave, I really appreciate you as a person, firstly, and as a friend, and grateful that we could record this for prosperity. And how could people, if they wanted to learn more about your art, where would they go?
Probably best just to go on Instagram, Glimpses of the Kingdom.
Your handle?
Glimpses of the Kingdom, which I started before I was ever into art. So, but it seems a very fitting handle for my Instagram. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, brother.
Thank you. My pleasure.